which will mean absolutely nothing, but that's what they are pushing. Yeah. They want to create a situation where the world will recognize the Palestinian state, even though they themselves are not ready. Fayyad, the new prime minister, has done quite a bit in order to get the necessary institutions, government, and infrastructure that is probably the foundation for any country, but they are still not totally there.
No, I guess, but it's the same. It's the same issue that we had in India when we got political independence. Some of the leaders of India at that time said there is no point in having political independence without economic independence, and I think the same issue is here. It may well be that the Palestinians do want independence now, but they have not earned it yet. They may earn it pretty soon because their economy has been going up at a rate of about 7% a year.
I would like you to, I would like you to say it loud and clear so all the nations of the world will hear what you say. Yes. This is absolutely correct. Yes. The question is the time element, how long it will take to happen, and I think this is what we need to decide. Okay, but you are absolutely right. Yeah. They are not ready. Not only that, they are fully dependent on Israel today, because if you come out, there are two states in Israel, cut all the support, electricity, water, and so on, they cannot exist. Yeah. So you're absolutely right.
But I think there's another problem that we actually face, and we need to understand. There's been this idea of trying to criminalize, and I think this is really what you were trying to get at, Jews living in the West Bank. And as you implied, Jews were ethnically cleansed from the West Bank and East Jerusalem. And one of the central problems in much of the Arab rhetoric, in fact, virtually all of it, is the idea of the settlements as virtually a war crime. Just like when Israel uses the same tactics that the United States is forced to use against terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda, this is also claimed in a very distorted, dishonest way as a war crime. Jews have always lived in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. They were kicked out by the Arabs very, very openly. And that's why Israel cannot return. This is one of the key reasons to the 67 borders. And the whole debate between, or negotiations between Israel and Arab countries about the West Bank is often poisoned by this rhetoric that Jews living in the West Bank are somehow a crime.
Right. What about the right, they said the right to return? We have to remember, when we're talking about Israel, we're talking about Israel is probably the size of New Jersey. Not even the size of Illinois. Illinois is big. I mean, can you imagine that, say, we're living here in, say, in Highland Park, and Glencoe is now owned by another country. I mean, how do you feel about this?
India faced a right of return,
yeah, I mean,
right?
Are the right of return, and also, Israel weighs new plan for a provisional Palestinian state. There's provisional plans, but a state with, they said that an Israeli-Palestinian agreement without a final demarcation of mutual recognized borders, without solving the core problems, without, at the end of the conflict, would only keep the wound open. I think there's a core problems. It's not just, we're always talking about settlements, and even our president, somebody said about the settlements.
In answer to what Mr. Gillian just mentioned, in terms of the Fayyad timetable, he wants a period of time, perhaps 3 to 5 years, in which the economic level can justify a viable Palestine. Right now, it's not viable. Even though they've made tremendous progress at the rate of 7% a year, but it's 7% over nothing.
But he's the minority over there. The majority of the Palestinians have been brainwashed, basically, and they expect to have a Palestinian state today. They do not want to wait to develop all those things. And the settlements, you are right, the settlements are not an issue. The settlements were an issue that Obama actually made that issue a major thing, which it was not before, because negotiations went on between the Israelis and the Palestinians until he brought it up in his big speech in Cairo. Yeah. However, that was
Obama's speech in Cairo, stating that he was focused on the settlement.
He was focused on the settlement.
And they were like illegitimate, right?
Right. And there is a major misunderstanding, basically, throughout the world, because the world feels that if the issue between the Palestinians and the Israelis will be resolved, suddenly there won't be any problems in the Middle East.
It's actually reversed, by the way. The problems between the Palestinians and Israelis really is fed off of campaigns by Syria and Iran, the governments of those two countries.
Yeah, but let's talk about the right of return. The right of return is there are two-edged swords in here. The nation of the Arab world, take Egypt, take Iraq, take Iran, take Syria, Lebanon, they dispel almost 1 million Jews from there after the existence of Israel. Now, are we going to talk about right of return the Jews back to those countries as well? Are we going to get compensation for all what they lost when they left those countries? The right of return is not legitimate discussion. There was no such thing as before as Palestine, before when the British ruled this place, okay? It was under British rule. If you like to talk about how situations take place in our world, is you look what happened in the First World War, number one. First World War, the British and the French conquered the entire Middle East, and they divided arbitrarily the way they wanted it. So they created a country which you call Palestine on the west bank of the Jordan River. Then there was 1948. The Arabs didn't agree to the partition of Palestine between the Jews and the Arabs. They went to war and they lost.
Well, the reason...
Well, one second. When they lost, now this territory that conquered was not owned by anybody except there were settlements where they lived in. So there were people who live in various cities and towns on the West Bank, and all the other areas which were not occupied was under the hand of the government of Israel to do as they pleased, because this is the way we behave in our world. This is the way the conquered get the spoil.
No, but Israel did not kick out the Arabs from their
country. I understand.
That's why there's 1.5 million. And also the other thing is the reason that the UN felt forced to partition Palestine because of a conflict that started by the Mufti of Jerusalem saying, kill all the Jews.
Yeah, but you didn't let me finish, okay? So now, we arrived at this situation. Now, when you talk about when war takes place, there are displacements of people. So now, to a degree, some of them, maybe the lower percent was maybe because of the war. But before the war, many of them evacuated their town and villages because they were promised, we will come back, the Arab countries said, we will come back and you will get everything what the Israelis have. And therefore they left. And this is, I said to you, the town that I live next to, when they told my father, who was one of the leaders of our town, we are going to leave. And he said, please don't leave. Nothing will happen to you in here. He said, but we have the pressure. Not only that, the pressure to leave. Not only that, we will come back after we will defeat you and throw you into the sea.
Well, the Druze actually took arms with the Jews to protect their neighbors, so that they took the opposite approach, right?
I understand, but I'm trying to say...
I think what we need to do is to move fast forward to the present.
I understand.
All of that is history. The question is, what do we do now?
I understand.
Why do we have to settle this now, though? I mean,
the reason is that right now there is no political settlement whatsoever, and political settlement is going to be very difficult, and it has to be postponed until some of these other issues are put to bed. And then I think we can open up the political situations of East Jerusalem, of the return of the Jews, and the settlements in the West Bank. Those are political issues that are very, very difficult to solve. And there is no agreement on either side. So let us focus on the economic development of the West Bank, and then I think there is a greater chance, once the West Bank is viable, then I think they can have some kind of leverage.
No, I agree with you.
There is no chance.
Isn't the West Bank being developed right now? I heard that.
Yes, it is.
Why isn't that being talked about? I understand the West Bank is being developed, but nobody seems to talk about it. I'd like to.
Well, actually, it's mentioned in many different places that the economy grew about 6.8% in the past year or two, when the rest of the world actually had economical difficulties. So yes, it is being developed. It's being developed, and we have to give a lot of credit to Netanyahu because he recognized that fact. However, I do not think that we can wait, because not on political level, not everything goes logically. Logically, they should have developed the economy, they should have made a viable state, they should have the infrastructure, the roads, whatever. But that's not what's going to happen. The world is pushing, and the Palestinian, Abbas, who is the president of the Palestinian Authority, all of them are pushing to create an immediate solution. And
But you can't, because you're ignoring Gaza.
Yeah.
They have a problem. The Palestinians have a problem between them, and the Arab countries also have a problem with the Palestinians.
But you have a
isn't that the plan for a provisional Palestinian?
No, but you can't. Okay, let's forget about the provisional.
The Palestinian rejected that.
Wait, but we
also they already rejected everything because they had all these plans.
We also face a situation which we haven't gotten to yet, is that Gaza is controlled by Hamas, a terrorist entity that is controlled by Syria and Iran. It is a horror story. The Palestinians in the West Bank really are scared. They might not always talk about it, but what they want more than anything else is none of what's going on in Gaza to come to the West Bank. So actually, you can't have this Palestinian state that they always talk about right now, including Gaza and the West Bank, somehow linking them, even though they're geographically separate, when you have this horror story, a failed state in the making in Gaza. As much as I agree with you about Fayyad and his legitimate efforts, there's no guarantee that he will be around forever, that he'll be able to survive, that Hamas will not kill him.
Are you saying that he may be replaced by Hamas?
Yes, I mean, now the reason that maybe the most important factor in the prosperity in the West Bank, or the economic growth, it's always been relatively prosperous, in fact, is the strong security cooperation between the Palestinian Authority and Israel, and then also help from Jordan and the U.S.
To a large extent, there is help from Israel towards the West Bank. They have opened up many of the checkpoints, and that is to the good. They have also opened up some of the territory of the West Bank for West Bank political control. But the fact of this is that most of the West Bank, at least from what I understand, 2/3 of the West Bank is still under the Israeli occupation. And until those situations are opened up, I think the onus now rests on Israel to open up some of these checkpoints, to open up some of the territories which are closed to the West Bank, so that instead of just occupying 1/3 of the West Bank, hopefully they can occupy all of the West Bank and eventually come to the issue of settlements.
What about Israel? I mean, Israel gives away all its territory. I mean, its borders and everything. I mean, aren't they susceptible to being? I mean, we're talking about wipe off the land. I mean, their existence. You know, if they give away all the territory.
No, it's not a question of the Israeli territory. What's happening? Keki was talking about the West Bank. And actually, the West Bank, the territory is divided into three different segments based on actually the Oslo peace agreement, so Oslo agreement that they had. And really, it's more of a security issue because the Palestinians are part of the entire West Bank. However, in Section A, they are totally in control of their security. in section B and C. B is a little bit less, both are involved, and C, Israel is taking a bigger part because it's more in the vicinity of Israeli
So Israel will maintain
city.
part of the,
But they do not occupy those areas. They are controlling more the security.
More security.
More of a security. As far as the economical development, it takes place throughout the entire West Bank.
Well, the country of Jordan wants Israel at this point. I mean, they won't say this publicly, but they want Israel to continue a security role in parts of the West Bank. And at various
also
points,
in Jordan.
Did you have something on Jordan, Michael? That you
well,
had, you had a hypothesis.
Well, there's two different things, but I would point out historically, especially when Arafat was in charge, the Jordanians never trusted the PLO to control areas close to their borders. Jordan has a Palestinian majority. You guys have previously said that Jordan would not take Arab towns in the West Bank and make it part of Jordan, which is called the Jordanian option. I think that one day that may actually become the most the positive option. I think that many of the Palestinians in the West Bank may actually embrace one day that option. But basically here we don't know that the West Bank won't one day become failed the way Gaza looks. I mean, this was supposed to be a two-state solution. Now people are saying this is really three states, if anything.
Yeah, so this is to your point, the political and the economical. Economical is easy to solve. Political, it's unknown to us how it will take place. We are concerned about it because traditionally there is no faith that the Palestinian will keep the word of agreement, of various agreement. The same thing is with what happened with Hamas. Israel moved back from Gaza Strip, and the idea was to try to create better environment, and the next day what you got missiles back, rocket back.
We haven't seen a leader like Fayyad succeed, actually.
Not yet. But
it's a step. What about that family?
Yeah, but it's a step forward.
Area?
So I think this is what Ben was trying to say. The reason that Israel is still in the West Bank, this is security protection, because still we are not there from the political point of view.
Well, I want to introduce...
Was the family from the West Bank that were murdered?
Yes.
Right. And was a husband, wife, and the little children, three children. How come that wasn't... If this happened, was reversed, and it was a Palestinian family that the Israelis did, it would be all over the news. And I found it, you know, when I do my research for a show, I found it. But it was on a small little article. I finally had to find something like that. It wasn't, you didn't see so much of it. If they did mention it on television, I missed it. It was very...
But a lot of the Arabs have actually said they supported it, which I think is the most significant thing. Israel overwhelmingly is outraged by the deaths of civilians. And when the Israeli army in Lebanon failed to stop Lebanese militiamen from massacring civilians, there were huge demonstrations in Israel, which led to the Cahnmann Commission, which blamed Ariel Sharon for failing to stop it. So there's such a mirror image historically in the Arab world that the Israelis demand that their militaries protect civilians. On the other hand, the murder of Israeli civilians historically has been celebrated through most, if not all, the Arab world.
More than that, they are actually targeting civilians because they do not have the ability to target the
Not just because
army.
These people are made as heroes.
That's
the
right.
guy who smashed the baby, a Lebanese guy, was greeted as a hero by Hezbollah and elements of the Lebanese parliament.
Correct.
So it's not just not being able to. A lot of times we're told they're not able to do it any other way, and that's why these people are celebrated as heroes.
They are celebrated as heroes, and we know that it's not only in the Palestinian and Israeli situation, but you can see what's happening around the world. You have in many other places conflicts. Most of them are involved with Muslims, unfortunately, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's issues in Pakistan, whether it's in the Sudan. We can see what's happening again in Syria. They do not stop from killing people who are demonstrating, so they do not give a damn for
Suzanne,
civilians.
that brings up the whole issue of how Israel is now placed in terms of the revolution that's going on in the entire Middle East. My feeling is
you think
that
there's going to be a revolution and civil war in Israel?
There is a revolution going on all the time. Some of them are successful, some of them are waiting to be successful. We know that the revolution has been successful as far as Tunisia is concerned, reasonably successful in Egypt.
It's a military government in Egypt right now.
The thing is,
we do not know yet.
It's been successful. We don't know yet because maybe the Islamic Brotherhood or the Muslim Brotherhood will be taking over.
No, but there are many obstacles to the whole subject of democracy, especially in the Middle East. It's a very difficult. Democracy is a very difficult institution to put into effect. First and foremost, you have to have a constitution. Then you have to have a totally apolitical army, apolitical police force. You have to have a parliament. You have to have the
stability,
stability of the people, and you also have to have economic development. All of these things coming together constitute a democracy. And even today, America is not a